the beauty of talking about the 5 stages of burnout is let's identify this before it gets to that point.
You know, where you're starting to physically maybe be unable to do your job, you're not physically feeling very well, you're mentally not doing so well.
My first step to healing and getting better, obviously, is with the body. You know, rather than saying, how do I avoid burnout? How do I avoid sickness? How do I build health? How do I really thrive? Our bodies are really powerful. We don't need to hack it. We need to work with it.
Are you running on empty? Constantly exhausted, even when you're not working? And do you feel like you're losing your passion and drive? You could be on the path to burnout. And today we're going to break down exactly what that means and, more importantly, how you can stop it in its tracks. And that's what we're tackling today. What are the 5 stages of burnout and how you can stop them from derailing your progress? We'll equip you with the knowledge and tools to recognize burnout's warning signs and implement proactive strategies to safeguard your well-being. I'm your host, Michelle O'Brien, and welcome to the Upward Spiral podcast. And today we have a truly exceptional guest. She's a functional and integrative medicine expert with over 18 years experience. She's a King's College London certified doctor turned functional medicine leader who aims to heal. She's also an entrepreneur and founder of Kam and Deep Sleep supplements and a homeschooling mum of soon to be 5. Dr. Cheryl Kam, your expertise in helping women heal from burnout is incredible. I am so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm so grateful that you're here. We are going to kind of maybe get into a little bit more of your story, but before we do, I think let's answer the question of the title of this podcast, and that is, what are the 5 stages of burnout? And can you walk us through each of those stages, please?
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, with burnout, I would like to bring us back to the original reason for why they had to define it. And that actually came from the workplace. So we're actually borrowing the term already in some way. So burnout is actually workplace-related stress and exhaustion. And there are then 5 stages of it. And as a doctor coming in, they are also associated with, they will tend to be associated with physical symptoms as well. So I've kind of, come in and used that term in a way to understand burnout and to spread the understanding of burnout and to sort of normalize the word a little bit. And it's hard to admit to ourselves that we might be on some stage of burnout. And I love going through the 5 stages of it because it's not just about, are you burnt out and are you not? Are you completely exhausted and crashing on the floor, or are you not? There are so many stages in between that we could be on unknowingly and flicking to and fro in that spectrum of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 being the most extreme form of burnout. And we could be most of the time flicking between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, which is what I spent most of my life doing. So we'll get into it. So first stage of burnout is the honeymoon phase, and this is when you have someone who is maybe personality-wise a very motivated, driven individual with a touch of perfectionism. And, this is the epitome and the description of a very good worker, right? Highly enthusiastic, very optimistic, and maybe very, very focused, on the job or on the career. That's a lot of us, isn't it?
That's me.
I definitely started that way too. And then, you might have a touch of overcommitment or whatnot, but this is in our society viewed as a positive trait, But is it first stage burnout? Is going to be up to you to have that self-understanding to know, So at that stage, a really good, if you find that you are at that stage, a really good one to get into is, hey, self-reflect on really what your intentions are, what your goals are, and what you're driven by. Are you really internally driven or is it externally driven? So that's the first stage. Well, the second stage is when really there is an onset of stress already, and there is, say, an overload of work. And, you feel like there is a burden, but us types, I'll say us types, okay? Because, we all know we're kind of all a little bit like this, hard workers, is that when there's an onset of stress, we kind of like pull up our socks and keep going and, make compromises in our personal lives, sleep a little bit less, try to function on less, and still carry on and do more. And still, this is praised, you see? Yeah. So by most of society, and here we are trying to change that narrative, right? To be able to spot it in our loved ones, in our work, and our coworkers as well. So where there's onset of stress, there's that overburden, but that overburden, if it's temporary, then we do have that resilience and we can bounce out of it, right? But when it kind of is a little bit prolonged, then you go into chronic stress. And onset of stress, chronic stress, here's where you start to develop these light symptoms of sleep disturbance, neck ache, headaches here and there, or maybe the periods are not as regular, or maybe they're getting a little more troublesome. Like the premenstrual period will be a little bit more troublesome. The bleeds might start to get heavier. They might even get lighter. You know what it is with women. It kind of can go both ways. And what other symptoms can come up, like muscle aches, muscle pains, the things that are very easy to ignore, and the ones that are very easy to supplement away or take a medication and medicate them away, keep going, So chronic stress, maybe by that stage 3, you will have that isolation, because you've got so much work, you've got so much to do, and then you just dive into it and kind of really forgot by that point, social life is really important. You're almost like, what's the point? I really have so much work to do. Let me go and get this done. I'm at this and this stage of my career. I need to get this done, and so on. So that's forgetting about your core needs and, these needs that really should be non-negotiable, like sleep or relationship or what else? Nutrition. Or movement, sunlight, being by nature, these kind of things kind of like fall by the wayside. Then we've got stage 4, which is burnout, where there is, you begin to have that apathy about it. This is when people really identify burnout. This is the picture of burnout. When you're, you can't even garner that morsel of initial enthusiasm that you had already. This is when you're really a little bit more worn down. There'll be like hair loss. There'll be, definitely an inflammatory diagnosis like PCOS, or, your insulin levels might be higher. You might be on the track to developing diabetes, and maybe some people may have heard the term adrenal fatigue or cortisol dominance. There might be also in women the estrogen and progesterone disbalances as well.
Maybe you're seeing like weight loss or weight gain.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So when you have a preponderance to cortisol or a dominance of cortisol in the body, there is no way that the body will want to let go of anything. It's in kind of a bit of a freeze state. And then, often what happens in this stage is we try to exercise the weight off, and, that's the common strategy. And I always say, hey, when I've understood the patient, then and realize by talking to them, I don't test very often actually. By speaking to them that they might be on almost the stage 4 thing, and they're trying to do HIIT workouts or really strong workouts or train for do marathons or whatnot, then maybe that's not the appropriate way of dealing with things. Their body and the nervous system actually needs that stress and get them back into stage 1 burnout or even stage 0 burnout, and then the body's going to play ball with you. In burnout, I've experienced this, and I think that people out there might experience this. It's when you really want to do it, but you're apathetic by that point. You're crabby, you're irritable. Your boss will give you some feedback, and you maybe can't even basically.
Taking everything personally, feeling having quite an emotional response.
Emotional or even dampened, The final one, we call it habitual burnout. These are people who are so deplete where it turns into something like a chronic fatigue syndrome. And I'm not sure if you've come across people like that, where you have to stop work. You can't get out of bed anymore. You know, maybe you can't get out of bed before that shot of coffee, or you can't get out of bed before, a few things to shock you out of bed. But there are some people who, for that, don't even work. The coffee doesn't work anymore. The adaptogens don't work anymore. The rhodiola, the ashwagandha, whatever it is you're taking to prop yourself up, doesn't work anymore. It's totally, totally flat. And that's quite a hard state to get out of. It can take 2 years, 5 years, 6, more than that. And that's out of work.
Yeah.
Not being able to really hold a job, Yeah.
And that in itself causes a huge amount of stress.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the point where there's a real chemical shift that has already set in. There will be depression and anxiety. There will be mood disorders. And of course, the mitochondria are all hit. And that's why it kind of goes into chronic pain syndromes or chronic fatigue syndromes. That's the habitual burnout that I'm talking about. Yeah. Working with these patients, it does take even half a decade.
Yeah.
Of very, very slow. The body's not accepting of anything anymore. It's in this frozen, state. Even trying to kind of like boost them up with supplements, the body's not really even accepting supplements anymore. So we're talking energetics or homeopathics or very gentle lifestyle things like going to the seaside, or changing the environment or changing their mindsets, even before using herbs and supplements, because the body's got to a very sensitive stage then.
When we talk about burnout, I think most people would define it as stage 4. I think most people would say, okay, that's burnout, where you're starting to physically maybe be unable to do your job. You're not physically feeling very well. You're mentally not doing so well. I think a lot of people don't want to believe that if they don't stop or do something about it, that stage 5 could happen. Like stage 5 is bad, and
loss of income.
Yeah, like bad, right? Like, but just almost loss of life in the sense of not death, but you're not living. You're in that state, and I think so many people don't realize that when you're in stage 4, and I think a lot of people can recognize that they have at some point been in stage 4, that's what it could lead to, and it's really scary.
Have you experienced being on one of those stages?
Definitely, probably almost all of them actually. So when I was, I was 25, and I had just moved out to London. I was working in a really intense job, and it honestly, like, I was trying to burn the candle at both ends as well and have a social life and see my friends. But it was the job, it was the work. I was kind of working 16-hour days, and I was just constantly stressed. And I got sick, and I got a stomach virus, and my boss wouldn't let me have time off. And I was like, I'm not very well. And he's like, look, just work from home, work through it. Like, you're fine. It's just a virus, it'll pass. And I remember going into a meeting, which was like the other side of London. And like, I was like sweating. I was hallucinating in this meeting. There were birds flying around the room. And I was like sweating, and I was like shaking. And even like the client was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, just trying to get through it, because he was sat right next to me. We came out of the meeting, and he was like, you're not looking so good. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I said, I'm really feeling really, really unwell. And he's like, just get yourself home. Like, you can make up the work over the weekend. And I got on that tube, and I woke up in St. Thomas's Hospital, like with my mum at like my bedside, like days and days later. Like, I got no memory, and like I'd collapsed on the tube. And luckily, like, I was going to meet a friend, and like he got me there and got me to hospital. And the hospital thought it was meningitis. So they straight away like did a lumbar puncture on me. And luckily it didn't turn out to be bacterial, but they'd already started pumping me full of antibiotics. Yeah. But it was viral meningitis, and I'd had like a stomach virus that had tracked into my blood, caused a viral form of hepatitis, and then had kind of entered the brain, and I'd got this swelling on the brain. I was in hospital for 2 weeks. Like I didn't eat anything. Like my mum and dad had to take me home to Manchester. Like I was so like broken because I was burnt out. Like, I hadn't let my body rest. And then what should have just been a virus that my body should have been able to fight, it didn't have.
Correct. Because this virus is everywhere. So why did it kind of affect you in this sort of way and then not affect the millions of people about you, right?
Yeah.
So it really hits your immunity. I mean, I didn't collapse in such a way. I mean, I feel like you went into something where you really were compromised. Were there hints already that you could have picked up that your body wasn't doing well?
100%. Like you couldn't have said boo to me and I would have cried. I was really, really
Strong.
On edge, like I was extremely emotional. Like I was struggling with my work. I was, I was just a nervous wreck all the time because I was in this just environment where I was just felt like I was under so much pressure. And
it seemed like you had not got the support.
No.
Or anyone to say, hey, I'm crashing.
Yeah. And I think I moved to London. I was like living with a new group of friends and I wanted to succeed. And I think it was a very kind of the environment was just the work environment was also very, we're a small team, small agency. We've got to make this work. There was like a lot of pressure in that environment. And I just, and you're in London now. So it's go, it's get your head down, get it done, go. And I also had some difficult clients as well, but what happened after that, it took me like kind of months to recover. I got back down to London. I left the job, obviously, and got another one, but I hadn't fully recovered. And again, like I wasn't able to concentrate at work. I wasn't able to, my performance wasn't there. I wasn't grasping concepts of like understanding what needed to be done for my job. I was constantly run down. I was constantly picking up like new bugs. And I think I kind of only lasted like 9-10 months in that job. And that was when I was like, I have to leave, and I was definitely burning the candle as well. Like I was still trying to have a social life. And I was like, that's it, I'm going to leave. And that's when I left the UK and had a one-way ticket to Asia and took, the rest of the year off to travel and get some rest and reset. And then when I did go back into work, I had quite firm boundaries. But it was definitely a combination of that kind of 4, probably a little bit of 5 in there as well, where like I did have a period, but I think I just knew that I was like, I needed to leave.
So it really took that big amount of boom for life to tell you and then be like, okay, you really don't want yourself in that situation again, Yeah. And I think the beauty of talking about the 5 stages of burnout is let's identify this before it gets to that point, and let's, go on.
Yeah, because that's it. It's like, it's so frightening, but it did not happen overnight. Yeah. It was like a gradual thing. And like, until we'd met, I'd never heard about the 5 stages of burnout. And I wouldn't, if I'd have understood 1, 2, and 3, when I hit 4, I think I'd been able to see it more clearly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to go back to the credits of who coined this 5 stages of burnout, right? But it wasn't even in the original definition of burnout anyway. So the WHO has a classification of burnout, but they don't talk about the 5 stages. I love to bring the 5 stages in because it starts this kind of conversation about how there are so many stages before that you can identify in yourself and your loved ones that need fixing already and need investing into already before the crash comes. I mean, it's like the number 1 insurance that you can give yourself. The personal experience that I've had and looking back and knowing about these 5 stages and then looking back at my life, I'm like, I must have burnt out 3 or 5 times, or spent my, big chunks of life just kind of surfing between 2 and 3, as I mentioned right in the beginning, and then in my work as well with myself, thinking that burnout was take ashwagandha for 2 weeks and then get up and run again. So I probably was in stage 3 burnout, took ashwagandha, went for a bit of TCM, acupuncture, felt great. And I'm like, oh, I feel great. Now I can go back doing exactly the same things and having exactly the 0 boundaries I had. and caring for myself the same old way. So that didn't exactly work. And then I realized that, oh gosh, it's so much more than healing your hormones, your adrenals. It's healing your nervous system. I mean, that is like lifelong work sometimes. And then, I was already working with women in burnout by that point too, and getting them well after 2 weeks, which sounded great. Then a year later, it would happen again. They would come in the clinic for the same workup, spend the same chunk of money, getting the same stuff done. And I thought, well, what's this? And that's also when I decided to leave the clinic and go into coaching. Because the burnout's not just about understanding the functional medicine and the medicine and all the chemical changes around it and working with it, managing the cortisol, managing the estrogen, progesterone imbalances, managing the blood sugar, the gut. But it's a lifestyle, And so being a coach and working with coaches as well on this was just so important. And so boring for some people who are more into the biohacking and what's this new probiotic that can help me with my mood, or what's this new MNN thing that I can do. But like it's, pairing that together with that 99% of the work that needs to be done, which is lifestyle, and sometimes lifestyle changes or habits that we never developed. We never learned ever how to do,
Yeah. Can you give me some examples of what they are?
Well, we know these things in our brains. You need sleep. You need 8 hours of sleep. And in women in the luteal phase, you might need 10, right? And then I'm pregnant now, I need 12, And we know this, and there's enough information out there on the gram, right, to tell you what you need. You need sleep. Oh, you need to eat breakfast. Oh, you need all your nutrients in the day. But how do you practically get this done? Like some people don't actually know how to cook. I didn't know how to like prepare a meal or do the whole cooking and making a nutritious meal for myself. I was completely reliant on takeaways, Yeah. And of course, when you're reliant on outside food, then you're at the mercy of what's out there rather than having a full control of it. Sleep is something that can be easily compromised on when you're younger. Right. And then you don't realize the knock-on effects that it has on your body. So there are these things that we know, but we don't do. Why? Then you go into the emotional and mental states of the person and what we were brought up believing. It really, really goes into unpicking that. And so with the women in burnout that I work with, the very initial stages, I have 6 steps of dealing with them on a very bodily level because of my education in functional medicine and, in my understanding of the body. But I know very well that to sustain this, it's the mindset behind it. It's the kind of questioning the wiring that we were wired with through our parenting, through our beliefs of ourselves, through society and how we were brought up to achieve, right?
That is part of the problem. I think, for me personally, it's always been brought up to be my family and my kind of background, very, very working class. My grandparents were kind of labourers and cleaners and immigrants and into the UK, Irish. And, my dad was an aviation engineer and my mum a nurse who rose to hospital COO. Like both of them worked incredibly hard to provide an incredible life for both me and my sister. But that's been such like a foundation of how we were brought up and who we were, is who we are and who we are now, is that hard work. If you want anything in this life, you've got to work damn hard for it.
Striving energy.
Yeah. And that there's an element of grit that is where I'm from,
Yes.
that's the city that I'm from, which is Manchester. But there is also that work ethic. And I think it's a very Manchester, what we call a Manc or a Mancunian thing, to have this grit, to have this determination, to have this work ethic. And we're all very proud of how hard we work, and we're proud of where we come from. If you meet a Manc, almost everyone has kind of got this in them. But, it almost defines me as well in so many ways that, I think that's where it comes from. This is why we can be maybe more susceptible to this burnout, is that, you're wearing it like a badge, but it's so ingrained in us that if we want to succeed and we want to do well at something, we've got to work damn hard.
Absolutely. And being able to integrate then also the respect to our own bodies is the thing. And it can be very powerful. It can be very powerful when you have that work ethic, but you understand that you're a coil that needs rest to be able to power out strong. You know, and it's that understanding where I think some of us have understood incorrectly that rest is a waste of time, or there are still today people asking me, are your supplements going to help me to sleep 4 hours and still function like a normal human being? And I'm like, wow, this is interesting, you know, interesting question to answer now, because really our bodies are really powerful. We don't need to hack it. We need to work with it. You know, I work with women. We so need to work with it. I mean, with men, you know, it's all a little bit different, but there's no ignoring that we follow the cycles of nature and the moon cycle with the lunar cycle with our periods and everything. And we have to respect that. And when you respect that, you can then harness the power of it. When you can respect that you need rest, you're going to perform so much better. And that's something that took me a while to learn, you know? Because good enough performance was like good enough for me that time. I didn't really understand what really high performance was.
Yeah.
High performance actually looks like this. It looks like having a lot of sleep and napping when you need to nap and not being reliant on coffee. That's actually high performance. That's sort of everything that you do is so highly focused because you're accepting that I'm going to focus on one thing at a time. I'm also going to rest. I'm also going to take care of my social life. I'm not going to overcommit in one area. I'm going to have a social life. I mean, you know, all this, you know, pillars of my life are happy and fulfilled because that's what makes us human. You know, we're not machines.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. Like I'm right in the thick of, you know, kind of like a 10-day period where it's like a lot, where I've definitely overcommitted, and I'm like, I've just kind of got my eyes focused on the kind of back end of the week where I know things are going to be a little bit lighter.
It happens when you come back from a break, right?
Yeah, well, this is it, right? Yeah,
Same.
exactly. We had a break like the week before.
We had a break and
so
everything's just like bunched
all
up.
of a sudden it was like bunched up before we went and now bunched up when you come back.
And that's okay too. If the 80% of your life has been nourishing, you've understood that all your nutrients are at bay and your movement is all there, you know, all the pieces are together, you can definitely handle. I'm not saying that we need to squeeze ourselves into rigidity and have a calm life forever. I mean, that's boring.
Yeah.
Some of us are just high energy, you know. I'm high energy. I think you are too. Yeah. And so how do you enjoy your life while being high energy? You got to understand the rest piece.
Yeah.
There's, you know,
definitely.
there's a time to shine and a time to rest.
Yeah, I had like, I think my Whoop band said like 10 hours, 20 minutes sleep last night. But that was because I was up at 2:30 in the morning running a half marathon. So I think I'd only got 5 hours sleep the night before. So, but I was, very, very tired yesterday. And so it was all about, I wasn't able to nap because it was Sunday. So it was lots of childcare. But yeah, knowing that, okay, I got to go to bed at 7 o'clock and make sure I'm getting what I need to recover from the early start. But yeah, I think sometimes we all just get so sucked into what we're doing and we're so excited by everything that's going on. And women particularly, it's very hard to say no or to take time for yourself. You feel like you're being selfish when you take time for yourself. How can we manage that? Really? You must hear it a lot, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that guilt, right? You know, you're guilty when you're at work. You're guilty when you're with the kids. Like, heck, what is this? How can I be guilty all my life? Like 24/7, you know? Yeah. This is crazy. And, you know, it's my first step to healing and getting better, obviously, is with the body. By the time you're already at some point of burnout, I'll just say, you will have 90% of the time you will have a nutrient deficiency because you're rinsing through it, or you haven't managed to, in that lifestyle, build it up adequately, you know, gaps. Then it's going to be looking at the hormones, and then it's going to be looking at the gut. Then I always have this general philosophy and perspective that, you know, it's not actually the individual's problem. It's these thoughts and beliefs that we've adopted from places around us, where have they come from? Are they really ours? Are they really, like, is society implying something that truly is what you believe, or are you just kind of like falling victim to it? And women are in an interesting position, and I understand women more because I am one myself and I work a lot with women, is that we take these on and they're not ours to take on. These expectations are not exactly ours to take on. The expectation of being like the perfect mum that gets the household running as well as put dinner on table after work is not really how we need to do it, So personally, it's teaming up well with people, our spouses, our partners, our friends, parents, if they're about, right? And building that village, because it's true. It takes a village. Yeah. It's not, a woman can go out and work, but if you've got the village taking care of the kids, you can go out and work and maybe not feel guilty. But that guilt is going to wear you out. And so I look at ancient, or like, how people have done it in the past, or more, maybe it's a little bit of a romanticized idea of how society should function, but I like the village vibe. That also means that, it also means letting go of some control, because if mom's taking care of the kids, then mom's going to take care of the kids how she likes, not how you like, so there's all that. There's having honest conversations with my partner about what I can handle and what I can't, and being accepting that I'm not, handling everything. Like, I'm fine. I do this very well. I find my husband and men are very good at understanding what they do well and letting go of the rest. Why don't we? We're wired differently. I think that's the way it is. We are wired differently. We are actually very, very powerful and can do a certain level of multitasking, and can do a certain level of kind of pulling things together, right, for the family. But should we be doing that? And once it gets to the level of resentment, is it really where our best skills are? Because every woman's different too. You can be that motherly woman that stays at home and bakes cakes and makes vegan ice cream and plants herbs, or you could be the one that really thrives serving outside in the community a bit more, something like that, right? So really that self-understanding and just self-acceptance of like, okay, I'm not this type of person, I'm that type of person. Helps, and really asking for help and not treating it as a failure. Like branding this thing burnout, it's a funny one, because I still am not sure that many women are going to be like, oh, I am burnt out, because it feels like a failure to admit it sometimes. Like, oh, I can't believe it. I feel personally a failure that I've got into this space for myself. And it's not personal. It really isn't. Yeah. It's really a lack of support, and also the culture that we're in most of the time. Yeah. That's brought us to this place, and it's generations of it now already. The working woman was like a new thing in the 50s. Yeah. Right? Women worked, but it was unpaid work. Yeah. I'll say that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it kind of stems out into our economy and all the questions around that, which I would prefer other people thought about as well. But it really isn't, I don't want anyone to feel personal failure when they think about this. It is a systemic failure.
Yeah, I think it's been talked about a lot more now. Hopefully there's more awareness. I'm not going to start getting into kind of the politics of everything that's happening at the moment, because sometimes it feels like one step forward, 3 steps back. Let's maybe bring it back to kind of the 5 stages. So if a woman is noticing that they're in stage 1 or 2, or maybe a little bit of 3, what can they do, or what should they be doing?
If you wish to optimize and really live your best life, I think that's a really good way of thinking about this, rather than saying, how do I avoid burnout? How do I avoid sickness? How do I build health? How do I really thrive? So focusing on the problem, I think that keeps you quite stuck on the problem. Whereas if you zoom out and say, how could I just create the best kind of the best health that I could possibly live, because I now have children and they're watching me. They're watching me take my footsteps and through the world and how I live and the choices that I make. No matter what I tell them, they're watching me do the thing. So am I going to do the thing or not? Am I going to rest or not? Because no point telling them you need rest and you need sleep in order to be fresh the next day, and they're watching you sleep late and do work and whatnot. So having kids really motivates me, and hopefully some of the mums out there. But really, when you step back and be like, how can I really best thrive? I've been given this body, the highest tech possible ever on earth, and the most resilient species ever. How do I work with it? I mean, what's going on that it's driving to the bone and it's sick? The body wants to thrive. 70% of my patients who come in only go through the first step of my treatment protocol and they self-heal. It doesn't get complicated. It's not complicated. The body will do all the complicated stuff. We don't have to.
Yeah.
But what are we not giving it?
What is the first step of your
nutrients?
Nutrients.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I will test and treat the missing nutrients.
Yeah.
And with that alone, 70% of people are not needing to come back. They switch on, they catch on to the idea, and the hormones just kind of self-heal. Yeah. Without any additional herbs or supplementation. They might supplement for a little while. And then that's where I step in and go, okay, well, if you are interested in coming off supplements, because after all, they're synthetic, what can we do? Oh, actually, we look at the diet. We look at the food sources. We look at not picking things that might block absorption of our nutrients, like pesticide-laden food or even stress or lack of sleep. You put in the best foods into your body. When you're stressed or you lack sleep, you're not absorbing very well. You don't create your enzymes very well, and your hydrochloric acid just kind of doesn't quite function.
Did you say there were 6 steps?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I have a 6-step protocol, which you can look up on my website. That's the kind of pathway that I take my clients on and in our programs and stuff. It's very, very bespoke when it comes into one-on-one. Yeah, so I do start with nutrients. There are a small percentage of people that have to start at the gut. Or have to start right at the cortisol dominant situation, or have to start somewhere. So when it's one-on-one, it's super tailored. But in general, we go through the 6 steps of testing and treating the nutrients and laying the foundations for nutrient-dense eating. And I find that after doing that step, everything falls into place and everything tends to play ball, so that when we are then going into step 2, for example, with the hormones, then we don't have to use as much herbs. We don't, a little touch of this and that will do, and we stop after 3 months. There's no such thing in my programs that people are on 12 different supplements at different times of the day for life, and you have a supplement budget of $1,000 a month.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Which is crazy. I mean, sure, like maybe in your healing stages, some people might find that helps them. But what's your forward plan? Do you have a forward plan? So our end point with my clients is actually going on holiday, forgetting those supplements and feeling fine with it.
Yeah.
Right. Because your digestion is robust. Your body confidence is there. Your resilience is there. You don't need supplements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. And then 3 is looking at the gut.
3 is going to be the gut and the liver. So the gut and the liver are very closely linked, and I often will try to optimize the liver first before working directly on the gut.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because it's the liver, the enzymes, the digestion, and the assimilation first. And when that's going very well and your enzymes are highly functioning, it actually clears the dysbiosis as well.
Amazing.
On its own, without having to, again, do long protocols. Yeah. After that, there will be the smaller proportion of patients who still have their sensitivities, intolerances, allergies. So that's when I will judge that, okay, your energy is good now because we've done the first few steps. Your energy's up, your brain function's up, no longer brain fog. And we can rely on motivation now, because you have that motivation to now do elimination diets, because that's not a joke. Doing elimination diets, right? Or going through the testing, for the sensitivities, whatnot. The gut is something that I kind of really leave for the last, in most cases, but not all cases. And the last piece is going through everything again, because in many of the people, and myself in the past included as well, these were concepts I knew in my brain. I didn't know it in my daily habits. I knew it in my brain what to do. So I would fall off the wagon, you know? I would forget some things that were core. And so the last step is actually practicing the whole thing again. So it's in your system, it's automated, you don't even think about it anymore. It's not in your brain at all. It's just in your habits, you know, automated. Yeah. And then we reassess. And then by that point, it would be maybe about a year. And then we'd be like, hey, do we have new goals now? You know, and so it'd reassess, and then we kind of like go for new goals.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
And so you talk about coaching. So this is more like health coaching.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I happen to be a doctor as well. So, you know, everyone's going to get that. Right.
Yeah.
You know, having had almost 20 years of experience as a conventional doctor and GP, doing family medicine and all the specialties within that, and having retrained and exclusively done what you call now functional medicine, when in the past it was called holistic, integrative, you know, a mouthful, all of this, right? Ecological, you know, understanding that building biology is so important to our health, understanding that now what's coming out about endocrine disruptors in our clothes and in our makeup and in our home cleaning, it has a massive effect on our hormones, you know?
Yeah.
Right? And the food sources and how our animals are treated as well has a massive effect on our hormones and our cancer incidences.
Absolutely terrifying.
All that.
All of it. And it's so hard to find the right sources of information and to understand what's truly been said.
And to put everything into context as well, because you've got low tox accounts out there that can induce a lot of anxiety and go, oh my God, I can't eat a thing. Like, you know, how do I shop? I go to the supermarket and I read the label and I'm like, okay, no, well, this is no good and that's no good. And this one's packed in plastic and you just have nowhere to go. So my tip for this toxin anxiety is to build your health. If you're healthy, you'll be able to handle some toxins here and there. That's what we used to do all the time.
And so earlier you said build your health. So I really like how this, you know, as a lot of women who might be kind of very type A, and you have got, you know, different goals where it comes to kind of work and life and family. And often when it comes to ourselves, it tends to be, you know, yes, diet and nutrition and you know, making sure you're eating relatively right and making sure that you're exercising and whatever that looks like, building strength, power, endurance, but never seeing it as kind of building health, you know, because I think sometimes that nutrition and that training isn't always very good for you.
Correct.
You know, I think one of the things I'm learning a lot about myself at the moment is I'm a 90s kid, you know, 90s, and I was a teenager through the noughties. So I'm very prone to restrictive eating. And it's actually only been in the last kind of 5-6 weeks that I've started to, after all the information Stacey Sims has been talking about, actually eating as soon as I wake up and my cortisol spikes, making sure I'm eating within 30 minutes of exercise, you know, and making sure I'm actually eating a lot more at the first half of the day and then eating a little less in the evening. But I've not been eating, and it's still something that I really struggle with for sure. And then the training, you know, I'm an endurance athlete. I like the long running, but I'm definitely not fueling my body, and I'm not probably building the strength and the power that's needed. But these, honestly, like, they're not under the umbrella of building health.
They can be things that, you know, it really depends on how you take a certain lifestyle. Like, are you taking it as, oh, these are some more things that I have to do now, you know, these are some more things that I have to do. If not, then I'll be falling behind. So that's the kind of mindset that it can take on, you know, and be like, oh, yet another thing. And it becomes a stressor. Yeah. So the flavor of taking it on is very important too. Very soft thing.
Yeah. And that swings from with diet and nutrition, it's almost all body composition. Okay, it's almost all wanting to look a certain way and feel good, because certain foods don't make me feel very good, right? So there is that element of like I want to have good energy and I want to feel great, but I will compromise my energy if it's going to affect the body composition. I'm so super honest on here, but I'm not proud of myself for saying that, but that's the truth. But with the training, it's part body composition for sure, but it's also I get a lot out of it. I would say running's my therapy. You know, I get a lot out of it for my mental health and community, and I really do enjoy doing the challenges and things. But very occasionally, and this doesn't happen very often, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it today. I'm doing it because I have to do it. But I'd say that's like 5%. But neither of those things I would ever, like health broadly, yes, I want to do it because I want to have better health. I don't think I'm focusing on that goal of like better health.
Yeah, I mean, being healthy for someone is going to look very different at every different stage of your life. So I'll share, because I'm pregnant now, and being healthy for me is actually doing very little.
Yeah.
When I say I have in the past, when I had a busy week, that was having 3 to 5 appointments in the day. And now it's 1, just because I understand how my body's going to react. And then I'm trying to also, I'm learning lessons, you know, about, I actually packed too much in yesterday, you know, and this whole week looks a little bit packed. How did that happen, you know? And so getting better at that, moving forward, and just growing and evolving and accepting. Because we're doing this now, not just for ourselves, but for the community around us. Like, we've got so much to offer. You've got so much to offer. How could you then tie that together with kind of running ourselves to a bone? Because that's actually less longevity in what you have to offer, if you truly believe in what you're offering. And then for the mums, you know, that's the really, really big one, is sort of they're watching you. You know, and that gets me, because I'm like, well, I burnt out 5 times. They're watching me. I better get this right now, because I don't want to be spending my life watching them burn out and by that time they're not listening to you anymore. Right? And you just watch them, right? And that's just the most heartbreaking thing. You know, they're watching you kind of not listen to yourself, right? Bypass your own self-connection. You know, that's not what I homeschool them for. Right.
Yeah. And I actually want to touch on the homeschooling thing, because God, that's just like
on the other podcast.
Yeah, I know, on the other podcast. We'll touch on that as well. But just on here, like, you are like, it's wild to me that you have got your own business, like your own successful business. You're doing your coaching. You've got all these incredible supplements, you know, and on top of that, you're homeschooling your children. Like, I can't even imagine having the time and the capacity to do that. Like, how?
There's a preconception that it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
When actually they need more play, and more play that is not curated by an adult, which is literally leave them alone.
Yeah.
Let them get on with it. Let them involve them in your life, and your daily life, and, you know, give them age-appropriate tasks to help out with. They love it. They just love doing life with you. They're not going to be entertained with toys. And I remember being a small kid being very insulted with toys, actually, especially when they were close-ended. And so it's more of the open-ended, and also handling dangerous things like knives or fire, and helping me cook and everything from a young age. At 2, they're participating already. So this is life. For that is what we're doing. I mean, my oldest is 8, so, you know, academics is sort of second place on our priorities, where it's self-understanding, being self-led, providing them the resources, and they ask for it. They ask for it, and I'll wait for them to ask about 5 to 10 times before saying, okay, we'll go for this class that you've been asking for 10 times now, because you know, they emotionally flick from one thing to the other. But I find that going to school is harder making the kids do things that are not developmentally appropriate for them yet and forcing them to write at 5 is harder than waiting for them to be developmentally ready at 8 and teaching that to them in a week.
Yeah.
Versus struggling through it in 2 years, 3 years, and then finally getting there, which you were going to get there anyway. It's just so much hardship. So there's that. Having gone through the burnouts that I've gone through, and understanding societal role on the burnout and the school's influence and the pressure that my mum was, in order that she also then somehow inevitably pressured me into succeeding a certain way, definitely plays into all of this. Definitely. It's the self-connection that got lost. It's the believing that what others told you was more important than what you feel yourself that I got lost in.
Yeah.
It's a self-connection. And the earlier you lose your self-connection, the harder it is to get it back, because you don't even know what that is. And so that was the big piece for me in my decision with the kids. And of course, it's daunting. And so I ran a summit and I gathered the best brains I know to interview them and to kind of set my mind up and also convince my husband that it was going to be a good idea. And so he teaches them math now. And that's very structured. And he's the more structured person. And I lean on him so much to get that going. I'm in charge of Chinese, and I actually just enrolled them in tuition class because, we don't exactly speak Chinese at home. And in Singapore's system, you have to still do the Chinese exams and so on. So we piece things together, and sport and everything, we kind of piece it together. So you're not doing all of it. You're not. You're just coordinating it. You're like the principal,
Yeah.
Principals don't teach, right?
Yeah. Okay, that's fascinating.
Right.
That's a whole episode, I think, in itself.
There are so many ways to homeschool. Like, you can do school at home, which is not the way that we want to do it. We don't do school at home. The whole point of being at home is doing home.
Yeah.
And having a family bond and having family days and doing trips and learning and having just rich conversations. And that's how they learn. The kids just somehow just sponge from the world anyway. You're not going to tell them about social media, but they understand how it works.
Yeah.
My 8-year-old telling me to create content to push the brand or to do discounts. I mean, he's 8. And I'm like, correct.
That's amazing. I think for parents who lived through COVID, I think the thought of like, that's what they think homeschooling would be. And that is like
not
burnout inducing.
It is not. Yeah. You got to realize if we've been brought up as a school-going, person, you're not going to have that skill of co-regulating and sitting down with the child. So I definitely struggled. I mean, I definitely have had emotional blow-ups and adult tantrums around them, learning the skill. But how else are we going to learn it besides do it, And there's definitely a lot of tagging in and out with my husband, who is a very hands-on husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how we both do it together. We're both self-employed, and we both are at home a lot, and we patch things up. And that's how I do it all. I'm not doing it all. That's the whole point. Yeah.
I think, oh my gosh, I honestly, Cheryl, I think there's a whole episode in that on its own. Because I think people will be absolutely fascinated just to like learn more about that. I think it's amazing.
My favorite quip is to do less, earn more. Because as a mum, at the clinic and working, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week sometimes. And in my mind also having people, that wish to grow a family and have a family and not feel guilty 100% of the time while I'm at work and while I'm at home feeling guilty all the time. This is, really where it stemmed from and where the brain really started digging deep about solutions, about how I was to show up and how this work was going to be done.
Any final thoughts that you might have for the 5 stages of burnout, how we can stop them, like any final pieces of advice?
I mean, if you're already feeling any kind of symptoms, I would definitely, even if you're not experiencing burnout, most people are deficient on nutrients already. And the first nutrient that doesn't even need to be tested is magnesium. And that is why we create magnesium, because it really beautifully kind of helps you to absorb nutrients from your food, or maybe even absorb nutrients from your multivitamins. And most multivitamins don't contain magnesium because it's quite a bulky powder. You have to take it separately. So we create magnesium glycinate super pure, and it was created while I was treating my chronic fatigue patients, the very chemically sensitive ones. And I thought, hey, let's bring this out to the general public and see whether they sense the difference or not. And they do. So super pure stuff that you can give to your children as well. And it kind of, take it in the evening, it leads you to sleep deeper, longer, more rejuvenating. And that one thing alone can really kind of fill up the health piece and invest in your health and wellness. If then after that you need specifics, then we can always go into the rest of the nutrients, test and treat them, hormones and whatnot. But the first step really is getting your magnesium on board, good quality one. And if you need, we've got a deep sleep supplement as well that you can pair up and kind of use at night as well to send you to a deeper, more rejuvenating, non-addictive sleep supplement. That is really, and invest in your sleep, invest in your nutrients, invest in your sleep, because modern life is just as such. Unless you're a forest fairy living that relaxed life, immersed in nature, most of us are deficient.
Amazing advice. I am going to link to all of your profiles below. So if anybody would like to reach out to Cheryl, please do so. And of course to the Kam and deep sleep supplements. They are amazing. And thank you so much. This has just been so insightful. I'm so grateful.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah, honestly, I've learned so much, and I can already see that I'm kind of flicking between 1 and 2 a little bit at the moment. So it's it's time to kind of just take a step back and have a look about how I can rebalance things a little bit. Not always easy for a type A.
Yeah, it happens here as well. And you were talking about kind of keeping up appearances or staying in a certain body shape. That totally is a big other topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge. I'm sure I'm going to be reaching out to you soon to come on again to talk about some of these other things. But thank you so much, Cheryl. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And to everyone listening, thank you so much for your time today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do drop us some notes in the comments. Cheryl and I will respond. And like I said, just check out all of the show notes and descriptions for all of the links today. And thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye.